Welcome. You're listening to Guiding Stars and the Jeffrey Wolfe Green School of Evolutionary Astrology. This is your host, Kristin Fontana. I'm here with Stacie Pazura. Welcome, Stacie.
Hello.
As we initiate a brand new series called Natural Astrology, and we are going to be discussing the archetypes Aries through Pisces from a natural expression point of view. And we're going to take 6 months to do that. Today, we are only talking about Aries and the first house and its ruler Mars. And not long ago, Stacie and I were talking about just everything that's going on in the world and how the patriarchy feels to be peaking, reaching maximum density. And there's a reaction to all of that, which is always a good thing. But we are all living on this planet at this time, and there's a lot of choices that are being made because of distortions, because of our conditioning. And we just thought it would be a wonderful way to talk about all these archetypes that we embody within us and talk about them naturally. And we wanted to gather with other practicing evolutionary astrologers. All our guests today have either been taught under Jeffrey Wolfe Green himself and attended schools of his, or have been students or grads of the Evolutionary School of Astrology. Here's our beautiful lineup today. I'm so excited to hear from all of these wise souls, and just so excited about that. So we will introduce them soon, and I'll give you a little bio on them. Stacie and I will do that in just a bit. But I wanted to start from the very beginning. I want you to imagine that the sea is the source of all things. And separating from the sea is a wave, which is the soul being born. So as a wave separating from the sea, you are a soul that is moved into this world, into this life, and the soul is represented by the planet Pluto. Within our soul and within the wave, we have desires that we've come here to actualize. And we can identify these desires by the energy that is emanating through our instinct. Our instinct is represented by Mars. Mars is a natural ruler for Aries in the first house, and Mars governs our instinct. Our instinct is a reflection of what is emanating from our soul. So Mars will take what is unconscious within our soul, which is Pluto, and make it happen in the world. So when we want something, it's not coming out of nowhere. It's coming from deep within ourself, within our soul. It could be something unresolved from another life, something unfinished. And within the soul, there are two dual desires that are antithetical. One desire is a separate existence and to separate from that which created you. And an equal desire to return back to the source of creation. And we all understand evolution in the way that our separating desires are pulling us out into the world to express ourselves and our souls. And it is ultimately about an elimination of these separating desires until the only desire that is left within our soul to merge back, that reflects evolution itself. Pluto and Mars have been known to be brothers, and Mars is thus the denser vibration of Pluto, because it is taking what is unconscious and making it real, making it happen, making it real in the physical world. Now, just because we are talking about the natural expressions of Aries and first house and Mars, it doesn't mean necessarily that all of these expressions are pleasant. For example, Mars, Aries, first house is part of the cardinal square. And the other archetypes involved are Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, all part of this cardinal square. Now, if an injustice occurs in the world, it's natural for the soul, for your soul, for you to become angry about it. Anger is a natural emotion, and it's not always pleasant to feel that way. But ultimately, it's about what we do with that anger and how we direct it and how long we hold on to it. I mean, you think about the spiritual greats of our past, Jesus, Yukaswar, Yogananda, Buddha, and you know that if an injustice was happening, they would have become angry. They did become angry, especially if greed was involved or any kind of separation, exclusion, any kind of taking advantage of somebody that was innocent or not as strong. Yeah, I'm sure Jesus got pissed. Pardon the French, but yeah, I'm sure he became a renegade in those instances. So it is natural to become angry when we witness an injustice. And I think about Gandhi, for example, who has Mars in the first house. He's got 7th house Pluto opposing Mars in the first house. It is in Scorpio, which makes it even more intense. But this little 90-pound man brought down the British Empire with that square to Capricorn without raising a hand in anger. And he did this by uniting the will of the people. And you can see that through the opposition. So when we're talking about Aries and Mars in the first house, we always want to think about all those other signs that are intimately connected as well through this cardinal archetype. And it's interesting with this cardinal archetype because with Aries, Aries just wants to charge ahead and wants to express whatever it is that's emanating from deep within us. And yet what will happen sometimes when we have a desire that emanates from our root chakra, and it comes up and out through the navel chakra, through our instinct. And in Aries fashion, what will happen is we'll go charging towards something or charging after something, and then immediately, or not too long after, I might add, there's this hesitation or this pause, like, wow, a freak out moment, because of the insecurity that we might experience due to not thinking about where we're going, just kind of leaping into this unknown arena. And so the insecurity is seen through the square to Cancer. And so there's a 2 steps forward, 1 step back phenomena that the Mars function or anything you have in the first house, planets in Aries, can experience. It is not uncommon for that at all to occur, as you kind of get a gut check again on what it is that you're doing and what it is that you're after. Now, Pluto and Mars both rule the 3rd chakra for the reason I expressed earlier in terms of the wave separating from the sea. That wave being your soul, and within your soul, the desires that you have to act out in the world, to express yourself. Now, we all can understand this experience too of going after those desires as that wave builds. When we say, for example, you want to have a new career and go after a new job post, or perhaps you're really searching for that perfect partner, and there's a desire that you have deep within you. I mean, heck, it could even be like a new pair of boots, something even simple like that, just reminding you that you are separate, right, from something that created you. You've got your own mind, your own will going. And perhaps at some point, you get that job and you actualize that career that you've been working so hard and diligently on manifesting. Maybe you find the perfect, or what you feel to be a perfect partner. And in those moments, there's this feeling of completion. There's a feeling of, that's it, I've got it. It's this wholeness, an echo of ultimately what it feels like to merge back with that which created you, that completion feeling. But how soon after that are you left with this experience of something missing? Is this all there is? That's something more, that void within you, that ache. And it's that missing piece that then has us all either searching for that sea, searching to return back through meditation or yoga or spiritual practices, or perhaps it's a new desire that you have, that you're birthing because you think it's that thing that might be it to create that wholeness or that feeling of completion. So once again, we might be looking outside of ourselves through the polarity of Libra to satisfy that missing piece. Maybe you are that thing or that one experience that I need to feel whole again. You complete me, as a saying. And so It's important to remember that we are all in a state of becoming. We all know this for ourselves. We experience it every time we exhaust a desire that we don't have anymore. And we are left returning back to the sea in search for something more eternal. As I mentioned earlier, that these emotions that we have are powerful in places, but not always pleasant. And it can ignite anger in us when we see injustices out in the world, like what we are experiencing currently as a result of the death of George Floyd and the authorities through the square to Capricorn taking his life and extinguishing the very life that and breath that he had within him. And now we have witness to that injustice on the streets of major cities all over the country. So Stacie, you and I were talking a lot about this, the passion that has reached our streets in this country. In fact, it's happening all over the world now. This movement that started, and turning a moment into a movement is what Aries is about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so before I really kind of get into that, relative to everything you just said about it's, you know, it's an evolutionary journey of becoming. I got some Chinese takeout and opened my fortune cookie last night, and this is what it said: we write our own destiny, we become what we do. Perfect for Aries. So in the case of George Floyd, I'm sure most of us know about this by now. He was arrested for, on suspicion of using a counterfeit $20 bill to buy some cigarettes. There were 4 officers on the scene, and the lead officer in particular put his knee on George's neck, and in spite of the pleas from George himself, as well as the onlookers, people were pleading, please, you know, he can't breathe, take the restraint off. The police didn't listen, and he ended up dying. That knee was on his neck for 8 minutes and 43 seconds or something like that. And even after he had lost consciousness, that knee was still on his neck. So in 24 hours, the officers were arrested, all 4 of them. But there were no one was in custody, and people were angry because everyone saw it, and there was just no action. And so protests broke out initially in Minnesota, maybe a few hundred people, and with every day, the movement has just been growing. People have felt angry about these limitations placed upon their freedom. And, you know, in a larger context, the limitations that are placed on the freedoms of Black people and people of color and people who are in economic situations that just tend to receive discrimination. And, you know, this initially, see, coming back to Mars here, it's the instinct to act out a desire, and anger is one natural dynamic within Aries. And the goal is to take that energy and take that natural anger, because anger is not the problem, it's what you do with it. The goal is for constructive action. And in the case of these riots, we initially saw people just acting out of sheer anger, destroying, lighting fires, just mayhem. And then it brought a response from the police to be aggressive, and there was just this fight. And you know, thankfully over recent days, the peaceful protesters have just really aligned and come in to support and lend their voices to George Floyd and everyone else who, you know, has been subjected to this. And things are getting peaceful and changes are being made. The mayor of DC just changed an intersection right in front of the White House that is called now Black Lives Matter Plaza. So, and then you have Minnesota that are now outlawing chokeholds. So it's through the peaceful protest, the constructive application of anger, that we see this positive change coming through.
Absolutely. And you know, Capricorn, which is part of this cardinal archetype, this cardinal square, connects to our skin color. Capricorn itself is actually black skin. And you can see the natural square to Libra and all the imbalance and injustice and racism that they've had to be subjected to for so long. And yeah, I do feel the tides potentially could be turning with all of these peaceful protests now happening. And in a way that wasn't happening back in the day of Rodney King. The attention got diverted somehow. People stopped thinking about him and what was happening to him and the reaction to it, like the looting, etc. So, and anyway, this is happening right now with Pluto on its own south node and Saturn on its own south node. Astrologically speaking, we are all, as I said earlier, just experiencing this patriarchal peak and this push that is absolutely going to create some type of Plutonian cataclysmic, potentially breakthrough, hopefully, in our society and on this planet. And somebody recently just told me that with this pandemic, you know, it reminded us that we are all one, that none of us is any different than anybody else. Nobody is free from the potential of getting this virus that could potentially kill you. And so it reminded us that we are all one. And then all of a sudden, as soon as we are allowed to leave our home in places and people are staying home in order not to die, quote unquote, potentially, everybody's out in the streets with masks on, trying to putting their lives on the line to fight for what's right. I mean, I find this incredible, really, right? That people are leaving their homes because they don't want to get the virus, and now they're out on the front lines because they're fighting for something that is so important to them. It is worth it for them to risk, Aries, what it is that they believe and what it is that they feel is right through that polarity to Libra. So I love that too, because I feel like it is having a universal effect. It's having a spillover effect to other countries, and you know, it's collectively gonna make, you know, be a positive thing if the movement can remain peaceful as possible. That's ultimately the goal.
Yeah.
All right. So, any last thoughts here before we move into our first speaker? I guess that's our last thought. All right, we covered some good ground. You think you know a little bit about Aries now. It definitely has to do with our desire nature, and our desire today is to initiate this series on natural astrology. Our first speaker we're going to pass the torch to is Kaypacha, who first met Jeffrey Wolfe Green in Fair Oaks at the Cheshire Rose in 1991. Wow, with over 40 years experience, Kaypacha's approach to healing spirit, mind, and body utilizes astrology as a healing art in his international lectures, experiential workshops, and weekly Pele report. He uses natural law as his guide to bring balance, love, and joy to others and to the planet. Welcome, Kaypacha.
Hello, thank you for having me. You can hear me okay with the rain?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, so hey everybody. Yes, so Aries, well, let's think about this, because for me, like Kristin was saying a little bit, I don't know that we can really look at Aries without looking at Libra.
Right.
It's like two sides of the same coin. It would be like looking at heads without looking at tails. And, you know, and it would be like sun, you know, like daytime and nighttime. Just think if it was like Aries, fire, sunny days, okay, Alaska, land of the midnight sun, or Norway or something, you know, where the sun doesn't set and there was no nighttime. So, you know, to talk about natural Aries, okay, or pure Aries could be considered like pretty extreme. So let's just keep that in the back of our mind when we go into, you know, the idea that Aries, you know, like even Kristin said, you know we have a soul because we have desire, And these desires emerge from that unconscious soul as impulses. So we have this impulsive desire to start, begin, initiate, charge, pioneer, go. Okay, the phallus, the masculine, Mars energy wants to penetrate into the future, okay, into business, into life, into relationship, into love, into just like, so it is this initiation that precedes, we could say, consciousness. I think, Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. And Aries says, I don't need to think in order to be am. I just am. Yes, I am. I am because I exist, because I am here, because I want. I deserve to exist. I am just a natural part of life. So I also think of Aries in terms of just like, especially with Aries and Libra, Beauty and the Beast. Yes, and I often refer to us as spiritual beings in animal bodies, and so Aries embodies this animal, impulsive, spontaneous, self-oriented. Okay, I am going to charge, penetrate, conquer, take, be on top. So this is very narcissistic. This is very self-oriented. This is very I, me, my. And it's not even so much like conscious separation, just as much as, this is just like the fireworks exploding. So we can say that the way that Aries evolves, the way that Aries grows, okay, is just by putting it out. I'm going to put out this spark and this light and, this word and this deed and this act and, this desire and this, I just put out. Cardinal fire, I always look at cardinal fixed immutable as Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, yeah? So we have this cardinal quality as Brahma. It's creative. So this is the perfect yang, extroverting, taking what is inside my impulses and pushing it out into the world. So the way that Aries evolves is just put it out, and then what happens? Every action creates a reaction. Right?
Yes.
Aries is just like, yeah, go. Until, if there was no, if Aries was the only sign of the zodiac, can you imagine? Right?
No.
There would be no, there would be no reaction. There would be no response. There would be no limitation. There would be no walls or boundaries or laws or rules to prevent this explosion of potential out of Pisces, right? That's why Aries follows Pisces. Pisces is the infinite potential, and Aries is just like, well, let's bring it into the third dimension, right? Boom.
Yeah.
And so it's hard, okay? It is strong. It is the warrior. And when I think of this expression of Aries, like, we can look at Aries as the beginning of a business, the beginning of a relationship, the beginning of a job, the beginning of a life, the beginning of a country. Aries, natural Aries is just begin, start. What we want to understand is that, Jeffrey brought in evolutionary astrology. We have evolutionary stages, and I very much associate, the consensus, 3/4 of the world's population, okay, just kind of, coming in. I associate it a lot with Saturn. And so we can kind of take it as material, physical, and this, the natural expression for a consensus Aries energy is very physical. It's the soldier. It's the army. It's the policeman. I've got a badge. I've got a uniform. I am going to insert. I'm going to penetrate. I am going to push. I am going to just like really take. If we look at, the masculine is like a sword. And I always associate it with the scalpel, the machete, right? The sword. These things cut. So Aries cuts. And whether it's, a man or a woman or LGBTQ, this Aries Mars energy, if it's in a, feminine, mixed with Venus or, a female body, I call it the Amazon warrior goddess. Yeah. Okay. She'll chop a path, with that right through the Amazon just as fast as any guy is going to do. We're talking like Xena or Wonder Woman. Captain America. It's just like, yeah. So, this is not gender specific. We all have Mars. We all have Venus. We all have Aries. We all have Libra. We all, these are just different aspects of our psyche. So when we talk about Aries, I'm going to speak to this, consensus. This is a race car driver. And it doesn't have to be a professional race car driver. Anytime Aries gets behind the wheel, they are racing. They are in the left lane in the United States or the right lane in other countries, but they are passing. I always say they don't need a rear view mirror. Aries is not looking back, okay? No. This is looking forward, right? It's like, I am penetrating into the future. So this is also about, does Aries stand in line? I don't think so. So this is where the Saturn quality can also be what? Particularly in the consensus level, it's external authority. I'm saying there is a speed limit and you're going to get a ticket. And you're going to go to jail. So actually, I'll bet, okay, if we did some astrological research, the jails are full of Aries. There's a lot of Aries that want to go beyond, penetrate through, break the new sound barrier, the speed barrier, the barrier of light, the barrier of money, the barrier of sex. It's just, and so there's, on a sexual level, right? This can be rape. This is just like, I take what I want, I go where I assert, So, Aries without Libra is dangerous. Yeah. Just like the sun, the day without night, we would get sunburned. Yeah. So Aries, Aries is a very, as well as being initiating and this creative power and, spontaneous potential, it can also have a destructive quality. Yeah. And that Shiva, destroyer, Pluto energy, really? I got 1 minute? God. I was going to say for 10 minutes. I didn't even individuate it. So very fast. Individuated is like SpaceX. I'm going to take this Mars energy and I'm going to be a rocket. I'm going to send it off, right? And then you go into the spiritual. Okay, the spiritual stage, like Kristin was saying, this is, Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela or Gandhi or, spiritual leadership, penetrating, but going farther, farther, farther. And then I'm going to talk about Pluto and Jupiter in the first house in 30 seconds. Oh my God. I just want to say, the first house is I am. I am Pluto. Now, it really depends on the sign that Pluto is in. Pluto in Virgo in the first house is going to be very different than Pluto in Sag or Scorpio or Capricorn. But regardless, it is I am independent. I make up my own mind. I do what I want, when I want, how I want. I initiate. I am independent. Don't fence me in. Don't hold me back. Boom. I am Pluto. Yeah? So, Jupiter, I'm Jupiter, the king of Olympus. Yes, great benefactor. So I want to expand. And of course, like I say, in Virgo or Leo or Pisces, this Jupiter in the first house is going to have very different colors, very different expressions. But, in general, there will be this, that I am, a teacher. I am spreading. I am, expanding. I'm traveling. I'm expanding my consciousness through the particular element, through the particular sign. But I embody this instinctively. It's not necessarily, I always say we're in the school of our ascendant. We're becoming more conscious of our unconscious impulses and selves as we grow, as we get older, as we get the reactions from the environment. So yeah, those are
Oh, Kaypacha. You're right, it's not long enough, not anywhere near long enough, but one thing that you said I wanted to mention, because I think of Pluto in the first house as being a natural leader, right? Because they want to be the boss, right? So it doesn't matter what stage of evolution, natural leader. And I remember Jeffrey telling me once, it's something I've never forgotten. A natural leader is somebody that people follow and don't even know why they're following them. Right? They don't necessarily say, hey, I want to be a leader. Like I would consider Obama a natural leader. I mean, he realized he had a capacity to lead, not to mention he was Abraham Lincoln in another lifetime, but a natural leader has a capacity to motivate and to inspire, and they carry an energy where people just find themselves following them without that person even needing to recruit them. It's just this magnetism that they carry. And that would be a natural expression for sure of that first house Pluto, or any, other strong planets in Aries or the first house, versus say a patriarchal version of that. I want to lead because I want all the attention, right? Like our current president. I want to be king. So there's a big difference between the natural and I think what our culture has driven through patriarchal tendencies. So anything you want to say, Stace, before we?
Yes. Well, first of all, relative to Jupiter in Aries, this is really a quick thought, but just asking and answering your own questions. It's that would be Jupiter in Aries. And then the second thing, I really like how you put it, how Aries, if there were no other signs in the zodiac, all we would have is initiation and fire and movement, and just, there would be nothing to materialize it. And Libra and Aries really are different sides of the same coin. And because that is exactly how the soul learns through Aries, is that it has this impulse to take an action, and then the reaction that comes as a result of the action is how they learn, and that leads to another action and another reaction, and that is the continual state of becoming, which is Aries.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Kaypacha, about the karmic piece of this, because they're not thinking while they're acting, right? So it's this boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
So it is this, we reap what we sow. That's how Aries energy learns. Sometimes that archetype can get too far ahead of themselves. I know I've got a moon in Aries, and so sometimes there's some blind spots when you're driving, right? Like you talked about in that fast lane, pedal to the metal. But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
That's great, Kristin. I didn't know you had the moon in Aries.
I do. You can't tell.
Another thing I love about Aries is what you see is what you get. The nice part about that impulsive spontaneity is they're not calculating, they're not espionage, secret, blah, 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 It's just very blunt, brash, but very authentic and honest. It's just like, this is who I am. Or not, take it or leave it, but they're not pulling punches or doing all this kind of, BS. I appreciate, the directness that Aries has. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is what can make that energy a natural leader. Like you think about in natural times, I mean, the people were choosing that person to lead for that reason, right? They're just out there. They're just right out there. Hello, let's go, come on. And their instinct is really strong. It's powerful, it's fierce, it's fiery, it just wants to go after it. So there's a power in that. There's a power in that, and there's a need for a tribe to experience an energy like that. It's courage. It's extremely courageous. Aries is an archetype of bravery and of being the first one out of the tent when there is danger. That is your Aries soul. Not even thinking about what will happen to them if they get met with an enemy in that way. So Kaypacha, I wish it was longer, and we gotta reorganize this to make it longer. But thank you so much for what you shared and for your spirit here today. We're gonna bring you back at some point when your schedule allows for that. I hope you'll return. I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, Stace, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so now we're gonna bring in Deva Green, who is the daughter of the world-renowned master astrologer Jeffrey Wolfe Green. She is uniquely qualified to teach this work. I find her to be so dialed in to just the essence of what her father taught. She's the author of Pluto and Your Karmic Mission. She's a lecturer at EA conferences as well as NORWAC, and an educator with the Jeffrey Wolfe Green School of Astrology. So welcome, Deva.
Thank you so much. It's really a blessing to be here with you all and to be coming together to initiate this wonderful series.
Yeah.
So some thoughts to tie into what has been shared here too, that from my point of view, we also have to remember that Aries is connected to the sign that came before, Pisces. So it's the courage to move forward from the past and all that the past has meant. And for a lot of us, well, we can really use the bravery and the strength of Aries for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Thinking about everything that we need to act upon, thinking about the courage that initiation really takes to truly bring in the new.
Mm-hmm.
I remember also in the respect of leadership, and a scene from Braveheart flipped into my mind of where there was an exchange to where an older king, he said, people will follow you for two reasons. One is because you rape, you plunder, you create fear, and the other is because they're inspired. And I have to say, I will always respect you and love you because people follow you because they're inspired.
Mm.
And see the exchange there in terms of something new and being able to leave the past behind. And thinking about that in terms of being able to create a new cycle, being able to step into something that allows a functioning structure relative to Capricorn to truly take form. And it does require, from my vantage point, in the context of the square, the cardinal square, to be willing to accept whatever consequences come for acting upon what you know is right. Meaning, do I need to go to jail? Okay. What needs to happen to me because I activated my Aries energy and I did not back down?
Mm.
And many people who carry Aries energy in general may carry wounds around willpower. They acted in a way that was noble, true, and just, and what the heck? So many of the people with Aries energy that I have personally worked with and known are also trying to recover or reactivate their will. That regardless of the consequences, regardless of what happened as a as a reciprocal action to what you put forward relative to Libra, that doesn't mean that you repress your will and take in the artificial judgment that was then cast upon you. You move forwards. You break free from that, whatever that experience was that, from my vantage point, can create an inhibition of will. And so looking at, specifically looking at Uranus and Aries and seeing the natural expression of that, these can be groups of people that have collective memories of acting upon vengeance and what that has created from a societal point of view. Collectively, or forming groups, this is the best potential to break that structure, to create something to where there is something brand new. It reminds me of a scene on Mars, where certain people were trying to not colonize, but they were trying to create truly a new community by going to Mars. And they interfaced with people who were exploiting the resources just like here on Earth. And they had a Mars battle. And what they ended up saying as this new group was, we refuse to carry forward what was intended to be left behind. And so looking at this from my vantage point, what this is activating in me personally from a Mars point of view, collectively speaking, is trauma around violence, vengeance. How does that saying go? That those that use the sword perish by the sword? That's a natural law. Change does not happen this way. So looking at Uranus and Aries, we're trying to find a new momentum. We're trying to create a new pathway in our individuated unconscious, memories that are specific to us, and also collectively. That at times, because Uranus is the individuated unconscious, memories that are specific and unique to us, we can hold these types of memories, and it's like we're trying to reprogram the unconscious relative to will. Sometimes, depending on the chart, it's reprogramming the unconscious relative to constructive uses of anger. As you were saying, Stacie, how do I use this anger in a way that creates liberation rather than trauma? And to dovetail that, or to connect that with Neptune, being in the first house or Aries. Oh, I'm sorry, I had an example. Martin Luther King had Uranus and Aries. And thinking about the strength of will that he had, I mean, it was his generation, but how his voice activated a societal movement. Today, my friends, real change. And to me, this is absolutely the best part of Uranus and Aries, a voice that can inspire. Remember the two ways to lead. And he, as you were saying, Kristin, I don't think he woke up one morning and said, I want to lead. It's that he knew from within himself that he needed to put himself out there, or that he needed to make himself available in that way to inspire others along the same path. True justice, true change, without anybody raising their hands in anger, violence, etc. As you can tell in my voice, this is a hot spot. Seeing what's happening and seeing the pivotal moment that we're in collectively, and how we're going to choose to use our will. Oh, my goodness. I mean, huge. And looking at Neptune then in the first house or Aries, again, these can be souls, at least from my point of view, who have come in with wounds around spiritual warriors, or perhaps aligning with what they thought was a spiritual battle, and then only to find out that in the end, again, violence creates violence, and so on. So it's the natural principles, it's the universal principles that can then allow a reformulation in the best expression of Neptune and Aries to move forwards, to have the will guided by universal laws, creating something new through a culmination. When we're looking at Neptune in combination with the first, it's culmination and starting something new at the same time. So these could be souls that, let's say, for example, have maybe felt that they needed to protect the innocent, needed to go to battle to protect the innocent. In their minds, you know, again, the holy wars, so to speak. And they've come in with disillusionment either around, you know, I was trying to do something inherently good. Why did I need to, you know, what the heck? Why did it end that way? So it's like understanding the universal picture of things, or allowing the will to form around universal laws rather than the delusion of vengeance. Yes, I mean, I won't lie. Sometimes it feels good. It feels good, but what happens? Oh my gosh, Neptune in the first. And then the Neptune can be feeling that a new sense of direction or alignment, a new way to guide that will that's more in alignment with their sense of ultimate meaning and so on. These can be natural inspirers in the best expression. These can be souls that help others who have also experienced disillusionment, and at the very best can inspire others to again align the will to take the brunt of it no matter what. Meaning, if those are the consequences, then those are the consequences, and I'm aligned with something larger. So the identity, or that part of Aries that can definitely me, or I am, and can be so separated at times, in a natural expression can also understand its identity as an alignment with source, or can lend its voice to something higher than itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that was really excellent, Deva. Thank you so much for reading. Thanks, Deva. That was wonderful. And I was thinking so much about something I had mentioned a little bit earlier too, this theme around being to die for what you believe in, right? That sacrificial warrior.
Yeah.
With the Neptune there in the first house. And, you know, it's we wanted to include some of these outer planets. Obviously in evolutionary astrology, we don't look at one symbol to tell a story. These are examples of how things can manifest. There's a whole story that we can see through the Pluto paradigm, the rulers of the nodes, and so on. And yet it's wonderful to look at them individually in this context as we make our way through as best we can, the natural expressions of Aries to Pisces. So any thoughts, Stacie, you wanted to add to follow up with Deva?
I really appreciate the acknowledgement of disillusion, because it's such an important dynamic within Pisces, because there is a vision that was considered to be true and real, and then here is this action, and suddenly there's a realization it's not real, and you know, and then this then gives birth to a whole new desire to align with that ultimate meaning and the truth, and just a whole new beginning.
Yeah. It's like it's so much bigger than this world, that kind of energy.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
So much bigger than this.
Yes, right. Exactly. And the actions we take now will, of course, you know, determine or live in that collective memory for a long time to come. I think, as Obama says, the big question of the day is, what did you do?
Mm-hmm. Ooh, wow. You know, I just want to follow with this, that I can't think of anything more important, really, on our journey than to think about what we have done in this life, and to contemplate as if this is our last day or our last moment. Will you be happy with all that you have done, with all you've come here to do? And if not, it's so much about looking back on our lives and looking at the areas perhaps that took tremendous courage in your life, and being able to recruit more of that so you can continue to move forward and not look back when you're not in the form anymore and say, you know, really wish I would have done that, you know. So, and again, it is much bigger than us with that Neptune in the first house. And so anybody with that particular signature, perhaps that gives them a Pisces rising, wow, they're going to feel it all the time. They're going to feel the collective. They're going to be highly sensitive to this world at all times. And, you know, it will be important for all of us to look back and to feel like, you know, yeah, we did. We found that courage to do what we needed to do, even if it's personal things, emotional things, family things. It does not have to be somewhere out on a stage somewhere. It's just that inner journey that we all experience, looking through that Cancer square to Aries that make us feel so vulnerable. And the Aries can feel vulnerable when they go too far, too fast, or put themselves out there in that way. But it's about becoming vulnerable that allows for evolution to occur, and that does not mean weak. So anyway, that was excellent. Thank you so much, Deva. All right, we are going to move to our next speaker. Bradley Naragon has a love for evolutionary astrology as a simple and effective way to reach core issues in life, while offering a clear path to work and grow through challenges. He finds that creating art daily is an inspiring way to appreciate the beauty of life and the earth. Welcome, Bradley. Good to see you again.
Thank you. It's great to be here. You know, I was thinking about this, and I wonder if I grew up, you know, knowing what I know now about Aries, Mars, first house archetype, I think I probably would have been a lot less lonely and more at peace with myself, more accepting of who I am, and just in general, less confused. When Venus is in Aries or the first house, we see that relationship is in a state of becoming. It's that plain and simple. You give yourself permission to not define this any further. From inside ourselves, it may seem like we Venus and Aries are the first house people have instinctual desires, needs, and attractions that are out of place with our complex psyche and or the socially defined normal behaviors. At the heart of this matter, having Venus in the first or Aries means that we are in the process of discovering relationship with ourselves, and by extension, how we relate to others. So we give oneself permission to see and understand what emerges and why. Give oneself permission to not define one's needs as static. Give oneself permission to not even know what the future self will need in future nows. With the Venus in this position, it's kind of hard to predetermine feelings, attractions, and needs. They just kind of happen, you know. Naturally, with Venus in the first or Aries, we're instinctually attracted to this activity or this idea or that, or this person or that. It emerges in the moment, you know, and what emerges is based on a whole combination of fluctuating conditions, including all of our personal karma leading up to that moment, physiological, psychological, mental, emotional, spiritual conditions internally, externally, and it emerges because of our need to evolve. Mars, Aries first, the leading edge of our own evolution. For those of you who have a Venus in Aries or the first house, have you ever been asked how you feel about something, like how you feel about this basketball? No, like let's say, for example, your partner or friend or a family member is like, hey, let's say we go to the market, we're gonna get some food, we'll come back, clean up, make dinner together, and then we'll go eat out on the porch. How does that sound? You have Venus and Aries of the first. How do you answer that? I mean, sure. I don't even know what I'm gonna want to do then. Is there like some room for like, if some, you know, like what if I have another need that emerges? Like, I don't know. Yeah, let's do that. Now, if you have Venus in the first or Aries, you can agree to plans and make things happen. And of course, with great excitement, right? Like, let's do it. Yeah, this is awesome. But honestly, we have no clue what might emerge down the road. Do we give ourselves permission to rediscover what we might need in that now? Do we share what this emerging need is? And perhaps we don't share that because we've internalized cultural conditioning. So, we're monitoring our own instinctual impulses. We're like, it's not appropriate. I don't want to be a flake. Aries squares Capricorn naturally. And in this conditioned reality of Western culture, we're taught to know how we feel and what we want. From Aries' point of view, this is only known in the nows. And so we have this pressure to know. The extent that one acts on this or not is a story, of course, that's going to be told by the rest of the chart. For example, if you put Venus in the first house in a mutable sign, that next current of inspired action that we're called to do is going to be more unchangeable, morphing, unpredictable. Now, say, for example, that person has, say, Mars in Capricorn. Again, this Capricorn Aries square, perhaps they're repressing some of these emerging needs and desires and overriding it by their own desire to maintain whatever normalcy is for them. This gives us a lens to start to look at this through. How can we live in this free, instinctual way? What challenge does that pose to the psyche? Defining wants and needs can be challenging as new needs cyclically emerge. And it's okay to not have the answer to the question, what do you want? Try defining needs within the present moment. Remember to give yourself permission to observe what these impulses are, what these attractions are, what these desires are, what needs are emerging. Bear witness to yourself, then remind yourself that this pattern is natural for you. Feel into your next action, use the force, may it be with you. Now, Moon Aries first. What says identity crisis like a moon in the first house? Maybe Pluto in the fourth.
Right.
Aries first house naturally scares Cancer, squares Cancer.
Here's it to you.
So when you have Moon in the first house or Aries, we have an archetypal combination that naturally represents a crisis in action. And this crisis in action is us discovering our own identity. Who am I? Maybe a common question of having this placement. One grows up in the process of discovering their own identity over the course of life. When does living in a state of identity crisis become normal? For those with this placement, at some point, you get used to this state as a normal experience of life. Because Aries naturally scares and squares Cancer, we immediately see that this emerging self-identity and image is going to have some conflict or challenge to home and family. So to really get to know someone with this placement, we want to, of course, with any placement, we want to look at the family and home life and the conditions that one grew up in and try to understand their experience, see where they didn't fit into the immediate family, culture, society. What were they discovering about themselves that led to a crisis of identity growing up? When I look back at my own life now, I realize I had cyclically had identity crises over and over again. And I kind of sort of forgot about it because I just normalize it in my own consciousness or just block it out. What doesn't live in an identity crisis every second? The moon naturally is trying to create some kind of sense of security, some normalcy, some comfort, and so we live in this identity that we're discovering and forming until we're cyclically pushed into our next crises. So between these crises, we're very much in the Aries excitement about discovering who we are in this moment. There's this newness, excitement, there's a specialness to this period of life. And so what one is excited about in that moment is passionately sought after. It's important to the individual. It's given time in their life. It resonates with who they're discovering themselves to be. So, what is this strange cyclic process of rediscovering self and forming new identities? And so when we seek to understand this for any individual, it's important not only to bring a lot of curiosity to all the conditions that shaped the individual, especially in our formative years, It's also important to understand the evolutionary state of the soul. Keep in mind, Aries naturally squares Capricorn. If the cultural conditions and social role models are not defining the identity in some way, one finds their self-discovering of who they are while living in this world that lacks a collective self-image or role modeling that resonates for them at all. This sounds a lot like being in an individuated stage within consensus reality. Now, if this is true, for example, it only accentuates even more this kind of lone wolf loneliness. Who am I? And nothing makes sense, right? We have to unlearn a lot just to get to this place where we can sit at peace with the experience that our whole identity is emerging. It doesn't even make sense or compute within the context of conditioning. We're taught to label and define things, give words to things. Surely we know who we are. So, just to hear those two concepts combined, self-identity, state of becoming, to be told this, it can be amazing. It can be very liberating. It gives you permission to see ourselves in this whole new way. That it's who we are isn't entirely based on this static concept. And Moon in Aries of the first house, of course, we can be initiators, innovators, and leaders. Gender does not determine courageousness or fierceness. What defines this is one's inner attunement to this process of becoming. My egocentric self-identity is in a state of becoming. You don't need to give yourself any further definition. Just let yourself be in this.
That was wonderful, Bradley. Thank you so much. One thing that I didn't cut you off, Bradley, did I?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay, great. Yeah. That was really excellent. One of the things that you brought up is just the intrinsic identity crisis that comes with Aries, where, in Aries, there is this need to have natural freedom, unrestriction, to be able to act upon whatever desires or impulses come up. And yet paradoxically, there's this need to complete oneself through another. And so it's really a dance of realizing how to engage with other people and giving oneself that freedom, but also acknowledging the needs of others and to let them act on their instincts as well, so that it's an equal dance.
I was thinking too, just, when we talk in EA about we can only evolve through the emotional body, right? So we have to get into that water trinity, and we can't evolve through the mind. There's a limit to what it can access. And when you put the moon in Aries or the moon in the first house, especially in a chart like your own, in a male's chart, when you think about kind of bringing more of the feminine into your action, right? Being more emotional, not just instinctual, but being emotional with your choices without apologizing for it. There's going to be a natural fear in some cases with the square to Capricorn, depending on the upbringing. Is this something that will be acceptable or any of that? But the ultimate goal for all of us is to integrate both sides of gender, right? To be equally male and female, no matter what body we're in. And so in a man's chart in particular, I think to have moon in the first is carrying that Cancerian quality. It's so important for the growth of that soul beyond having these experiences that allow that soul to understand what it wants and who it is, to be able to access emotion within those experiences so you can evolve. So that would be you calling in experiences that force you back on yourself. You talked about an early childhood. You wish you understood the archetype more, you wouldn't have been so lonely. And it's that lesson of learning how to feel empowered and secure within your own steps, because you want this. And it's okay to want this. Because in my opinion, I don't want to say there aren't any wrong choices, but whatever is happening from within, something our soul needs to actualize, and really without hesitation. So would you say that, because I know you well enough to know, I mean, you are also a very emotional soul. I mean, you're a sensitive soul. And so a big part of this life would have been to integrate both sides, right, of gender within you more equally.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for what you offered. And we're trying to cover as many archetypes as we can today, so people feel what it all looks like. And I do love too the moon, Venus in Aries, or moon in the first, moon in Aries, is very much about the identity is in a state of becoming. We are all in a state of becoming, but that Aries archetype with that relationship to yourself really does need that full freedom, without apologizing for it. So, or else it'll come back again, those desires and those wishes and those whims. All right, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Bradley. Okay, well,
Right.
now, oh, go ahead.
Your turn.
Okay.
You go.
So now we're going to bring in Rose Marcus. Rose is an evolutionary astrologer, a columnist, a lecturer, a teacher, and author, and has worked on both TV and radio. She has facilitated many workshops with Jeffrey Wolfe Green in the early 1990s. She's the author of Insights into Evolutionary Astrology, and she offers EA courses at the Soulwise School of Evolutionary Astrology. So I just want to give you a huge welcome, Rose. We're really excited to hear what you have to say.
Well, thank you very much. And it's my great honor to be here today. And I've loved what everybody has said so far. So I happen to be a sun in Aries. And so this is, of course, my archetype here. And I love what Baba Ram Dass said, be here now. Be here now. The Aries archetype is the first sign of spring. Relative to the first house, it is, as we have all said, an initiating, pioneering, beginner archetype, with the Aries archetype as all fire signs, a sense of special destiny. And that special destiny is to discover, to experience, and to discover. And what does one discover through Aries, coming from the Pisces archetype, the sign that came before? We have the desire to discover something new about oneself, to discover more about one's potential. And it is also or to recover one's intrinsic self and the real me. And this is a point I wanted to bring up today. So Aries is all about the experiential. It's instinctual, it's intuitive. Aries' best features are spontaneity, enthusiasm, passion. Aries also has great sensitivity. And as this is a beginning sign as well, too, and we brought this up earlier, Aries doesn't have an agenda. It is really an innocent sign. It is here to experience. It doesn't have an aforethought. Instinctual energies, this is a spontaneous combustion sign. So when Aries is acting, it is acting on instinct, and it is acting on impulse, and it is acting on the moment. And this is ideal for the Aries. Aries is typically, I think, thought of as a brute sign. It's aggressive. The angry piece, the anger that goes with violence. All of the things that we know about Aries. But Aries is meant to be assertive. It is meant to be first. It is meant to charge out there and experience. So there's this great energy with that fire energy that initiates. We need to have a lot of power. Mars in Aries archetype is the will of the soul in action. This is present time. This is here now. And with the Aries archetype, what the soul is meant to do, first house archetype, is to experience the separate self through the experiential thread, to discover more of me, myself, and I. And, in today's world, and we have so much spontaneous combustion going on right now as we speak on the planet. So much is firing up right now. We, as a species, we are group oriented, or we're all together, and we're at a point in our collective experience now where we have to have a greater degree of separation from what has come before, and we are in a transition period right now where it is very important for us to explore our individuality. Aries is a singular self. It's about me, myself, and I. It's about my individuality. It's about me experiencing who I am. Right now we have, so many collective planetary influences now, especially Neptune in Pisces, the collective, and we're having a collective experience now. And we have Chiron in Aries, which is a 9-year transit happening right now as well too. Everything that's happening on the planet is meant for there to be a degree of separation so that we can now identify ourselves in some kind of new way. I was listening to the news the other night about all the things that were going on right now, and they were talking about the Black Lives Matter and all the spontaneous combustion of the protests that are happening and so on. And one person was describing this as, we have to look at this and we have to personalize, and this is the Aries archetype, who am I in all of this? This is a moment for us to discover, or to rediscover, what it means for me to be a human being, and what it means for me to contribute on an individual level to the whole creative process. Creative self-actualization through experience. Aries learns, and Aries is part of the natural fire trinity, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And this is through the creative process. The sun in Aries is about creative self-actualization, self at center, coming back to center. And I think that we have lost so much, the sense of narcissism or selfishness that we use to describe the Aries archetype. There are times when you have to come back to self. There are times when you have to put self first. If you can't put self first, if you can't fight for me, how can you fight for we, right? So I always think that, Aries has great nobility about it. There's a purity and an innocence about warrior Aries. Kaypacha was talking about soldier Aries. There's a difference between soldier Aries and warrior Aries. And Chiron in Aries right now, what we are being called to do is to be spiritual warriors. It takes so much courage to stand as a group of one. And, somebody has to be first. Somebody has to start, and, whenever we go against the grain, whoever it is that starts, there's so many sticks and arrows being fired at that particular individual, for stepping out of consensus, or stepping out of group, or stepping out of agreement and going one's own way. especially today with, you know, I'm a sun in Aries. I'm a strong feminine, and we are right now being called to redesign what it means to be self, and what it means to represent, and what it means to represent as a powerful individual, and certainly for us to be for the feminine half to be strong, powerful, dynamic, feminine. You know, Aries is a very generous sign, I have to say, you know, in terms of the pure and essential Aries. Aries must lead, you know, and of course, you know, we have this idea of Aries is a good, strong start and a lousy finish. You know, Aries is meant to fire it up so that we can pass over the baton to another. And in terms of that passing over the baton, that's what brings in. Aries does not want to operate in a vacuum, but Aries is strong being in first position. So let me show courage, let me show initiative, let me go, let me act. You know, I always say that medicine for Aries is action. What am I, you know, what should I do? Sitting on the fence. I know this for myself. When I have a choice and when I'm in dilemma, my choice will be to act. And in terms of risk taking as well, too, you know, when Aries is courageous, Aries is willing to risk failure, because even at failure will be experience, and experience is self-knowledge. So you know what? I'm going to take an action. I know the risk here, it's a 50-50. I might win, I might lose, but I would rather act than to do nothing, right? You know, Chiron and Aries right now, I know I wasn't supposed to talk about that, but Chiron and Aries, it's the consequences right now that we are experiencing of our non-action, of our, of not showing strength at key moments, at not being decisive at key moments. And here we are now asked to be warriors, right? If you have a sun in Aries, you know, again, you know, this idea of being self-centered, you know, when we hear the word selfish, I think we all want to cringe, you know, I don't want to be selfish, but it's not about being selfish, it's about being self-centered, right? You know, I have to be able to look here and to find me. If I can't find me, I have no ability to contribute, right? Mercury in Aries, Mercury is the perception archetype. It's the looking and seeing planet. Mercury is about how we perceive and how we create. With Mercury is well aligned in Aries, they combine very well together. Mercury rules the nervous system. It's about spontaneous, right? You know, we have simultaneous to the instincts that we have action. And that is exactly what Mercury in Aries is meant to do, to take action. It's quick thinking, it's thinking on your feet, it is action, it is dynamic. We need to hear from, we need to hear a strong voice, and we need to hear from people who have the courage to speak up and tell it like it is. That's Mercury in Aries. You may not like to hear it, but if you do hear it, you know, I have to say this. I have always said to my friends, I would rather you tell me what you think is wrong with me so that I can correct it. I would rather hear it from somebody that I love, somebody that I trust. Please tell me if I have imposed or if I have crossed a boundary with you, because Aries is very self-correcting. And, you know, it's an interesting demonstration with the protests right now, and I think that this is a demonstration of that self-correcting. We've gone from the spontaneous combustion of anger, you know, outrage over the murder that we see at the hands of the police. It's also happened in Canada right after George Floyd. And so there was anger and there was action taken. And that action went to extreme. It went to violence. It went to looting. It went to all of that. But you see, it's coming back now to peaceful protest. See how fast that happened? It wasn't correct to, you know, that violence, it erupted. You know, it was that volcanic erupted. But Aries is self-correcting. And, you know, you have to know that, that there's much beauty in terms of that, that fire energy that that Aries has. I see my time is up. I have.
Thank you so much, Rose. You know, I don't know one female Aries that isn't really strong. I know a lot of strong male Aries too, but I have a niece who is a strong feminist, and she's all about human rights. And wow, she's an April Aries like yourself, and I'm just so proud of that. Some of those that generation, I feel the Pluto and Sag generation, you know, they're fighting for the truth. They're fighting for what's right. Many of them, of course, not across the board. Are they all in alignment? But it's that generation, that Pluto and Sag generation, that really I think is part of the fire trine, right? The special sense of destiny. It's got a global component to it. Efforts that are being made now can have world effects, whether you're involved in public health or anything along those lines, right? So thank you so much. And I love what you shared at the end there, because I never really thought about it in that way in terms of correction, because Aries don't think before they act. And then of course there's that one step back where the emotions get involved, right? And then maybe it's some guilt on the other side of that, with that square to Capricorn. Oh my gosh, did I hurt your feelings? The polarity to Libra, I wasn't thinking of them first. And so all of these emotions can get activated for that Aries soul. And that's where the correction can quickly happen, because through polarity, they do want to do right by the other person, right? They want to make things fair and balanced. And that is the evolution of that archetype. Help me when I do something that you don't feel is okay, or please tell me so I'm aware of it, because Aries aren't always thinking about everything, right?
Absolutely. Quick learner. It's quick reactions, you know? Yeah, it's one of the beauties of the archetype.
You know, one thing that we haven't talked about today that I wanted to bring up with you, because I've got that Aries moon, you know, right on your sun. It's something that I've learned in this lifetime and learned very early on in this work, is that the Aries souls are learning the art of response versus reaction. So there are cases, of course, when somebody insults an Aries and they get defensive, right? I'm not, you know, not every Aries is going to respond like you might. But anyway, that Aries are learning that the power of the pause, the power of waiting versus reacting. And so it's response versus reaction. And
I myself have had to learn how to count to 10. And, you know, over time, Aries refines.
With Aries learning that. So, oh, yeah. Like
absolutely. Learning how to respond rather than react. Absolutely. And, you know, we're moving into a very long transit of Mars through the sign of Aries, and that's exactly it. Coming back and responding, you know, taking that information in. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, it's no coincidence that we've all been quarantining for a couple months, and then Mars is going to enter Aries, and we will have a retrograde from early July till the end of this year. And it is a 2 steps forward, 1 step back experience for us all. It will force that state of reflection again, and hopefully we can respond this time, you know, versus reacting. And I really do feel that it will help in our relationships when this happens. And the way that I've learned how to get better at it is when I feel a lot of emotion around something, I try and just give myself like 10 seconds before, or maybe a day before I do anything about it. So thank you so much for what you offered today. And look forward to seeing you back here again
Thank
in future
you.
shows. Okay. Well, we are at our final speaker, Ari Moshe. And Ari, gosh, has been involved in this work for many, many years. We've shared space on the radio for many, many years as well. And he's currently been working on the Evolutionary Astrology message board with a beginner's thread. And there's so many people participating in that and at least wanting to participate and reading through it. So if any of you don't know about that, I just wanted to mention that so you can check it out and learn some of the deeper veins of this work and the paradigm as well. And so Ari has written a book on beginner's evolutionary astrology for the beginner, and Ari Moshe, is it AriMosheWolfe.com?
AriMoshe.com.
AriMoshe.com, thank you. So I wanted to welcome you, Ari, and I'm very excited about what you have to say here, and especially how we're closing the show, but I won't spoil the surprise.
Okay. Yeah, so happy to be here. It sounds good? Sounds good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, great. I want to jam a little bit on the last point. So I'm going to start with speaking about Mars in Aries, or in the first house. And the idea of learning the difference between a response or a reaction. There's a learning curve that happens with Mars, and it's emphasized in the first house. We all have this impulse to act and the ability to say, no, I'm not going to go here, or yes, I want this. We need to have that instinctual ability to respond and to engage with our environment. It's a part of the journey. As Kristin was saying, that the Mars translates the desires of the soul into conscious choice and action. So it's how the individuated, through our ego construct, through our sense of self, we are facilitating this journey by way of a conscious desire nature. The problem is whenever the drive to do, to move forward, to progress, to get, to defend becomes its own purpose, the problem can be where consciousness gets so bound up in just defense for its own sake, without building any level of intelligence. And so in a completely unrefined way, the Mars energy starts off purely instinctual. There's zero awareness of consequence. So my daughter is at this stage, she's 6 months, she's grabbing things now. And we have to make sure when we sit her down that she's not going to grab anything dangerous because there's no distinction. So we just make sure there are like safe things around her. That awareness of action and reaction, cause and effect, that grows and matures within a soul. And this is where the consciousness of Mars says, you're going to be given all of this energy and all of this drive, and you have no clue what to do with it. Like you don't know what you're supposed to do with it. So there's this existential anxiety. When you put Mars in the first house, it doesn't matter what sign, there's an anxiety that comes with it because there's this impulse to keep on moving. And so the desire nature can be very excited. It can be very erratic. It can be very reactive, very instinctual. To one's own self, that's very destabilizing, right? Because we have the reality of the present moment. And then we have Mars in the first house, which is like next. On some level, Mars in the first house is very present moment. It's very like here now, but it's also completely not present moment because it's always moving into the next. And so the anxiety can be this need for constant movement, constant stimulation. And then if anything is perceived as getting in the way of the direction I believe and feel strongly that I need to go, I even see that. I'm living with a 6-year-old too. It's like, I was playing on the phone. You can't take it from me right now. the sense of immediacy, the whole world is wrapped up around, actually he has an Aries moon too, the whole world is wrapped up around what I'm doing in this moment. It becomes so incredibly single focused that it's so easy to lose the perspective and sort of almost lose the greater purpose and meaning and the function of the Mars archetype in the first place. So training and refining one's ability to act, to respond, to move, and to engage, while also cultivating the ability to slow down, to take a step away from the battlefield, so to speak, and become self-reflective. And you can take the analogy of, be it a general going out to war, or, to not always make it about war. Anytime anyone is out there doing something that's important, you're going in a direction, it is necessary, and there's a sort of responsibility, and this is the square between Aries and Capricorn. There's a responsibility. If you are using this much energy, if you are choosing to assert yourself in life, and in a way entitling yourself to exist, it is required that you are not falling under the delusion and the unself-reflected energy of, I'm just going to go and do what I want, how I want to do it, no matter what. The ability to self-reflect and to slow down and take into account, okay, I touched that and I bled. I reacted this way and now no one wants to be my friend. I ate this and now I feel horrible. So there is an intelligence that grows with the Mars archetype, and it generally happens over time. It generally happens as a soul matures and ages, where one will develop more of a leadership capacity, to have a lot of power, to have a lot of strength, to have a lot of stamina, to have a strong desire nature, but to use it for purpose. There's a teaching in A Course in Miracles that says, whenever I defend, I am attacked. When I defend myself, I am attacked. And what that teaching is wanting to point to, when the mind is in this frenetic state of, I need to get what I want, we're actually creating a reality of opposition and attack. We're creating, via our own vibration, via our own intense fixation on where we believe we need to go, a reality that is out to get us, that is unsafe, where there are threats, where there are enemies, where there's some sort of obstacle. And what's the greatest threat to Mars in the first house? The perception that I can't instinctively act and make choices that I need to make right now. Because if we don't have the ability to make the choices that we feel we need to make on our soul path, then what it translates to is, then I can't live. Right? It's literally like, I can't evolve, I can't do what I came here to do, whatever that is. The need to feel that we're free is absolutely crucial and necessary with Mars in the first. However, that freedom needs to be directed with a growing and profound self-awareness and reflection of, where am I going with all of this? Mars is like a self-cleaning oven. Our actions, in a sense, are burning our karma. And we're not going to rush through them. You can't just transcend it. There is a path for each. What is our purpose, right? It's not the special thing. Our purpose is to take the next step, to walk our path. And it takes many forms, many lives, many shapes, many expressions. And what happens as we do that, we exhaust our desires. We get engaged. We get into the relationship. We buy the thing. We do the thing. We play out these whole life scenarios through the Mars function. And it's a self-cleaning oven, because ultimately through the action we're burning our karma, we're burning the impulses to remain separate. But the intelligence and the self-reflection is an absolutely necessary part of it. And this really brings us all to a greater state of leadership and self-trust, where they can also be trusted. Your actions, your purpose, how you're moving has purpose. You are not just acting instinctively according to your own narcissistic impulses. you can be trusted that you have a direction in mind. And you're not going to refer to your instinctual thoughts in the moment because you already know that you can't trust that. You're going to learn. You're going to review your history. You're going to take time. And what's that Libra polarity point? You're not going to see other people's perspectives and points of view as antagonistic and getting in the way of you. You'll be humble and willing. What is the greatest sign of defenselessness? The ability to listen. Because you will choose what you will choose. And so nothing is lost by slowing down and listening. Now, let's move to Saturn in the first house. So as we've spoken several times about the natural square between Aries and Capricorn, 1st and 10th, when we deal with Saturn, we're looking at how consciousness is operating and conditioning itself within structure, within form, within time and space. And I got 1 minute, so let's work this Saturn, baby. Within structure, there's a need to become self-aware. Am I relating to time and space and structure and form in a way that is allowing me to condition my consciousness and grow in greater discipline in leadership? Are my actions sort of like a boy and I'm just acting instinctively and not considering the effects of it? Or am I training myself with respect to someone that understands? If I don't discipline myself, if I don't learn how to use my impulses and train my mind to act with purpose and also with respect and dignity to know what I'm doing and where I'm going and how I'm going to get there, that I'm just going to be living out my own self-importance without any deeper reflection. Saturn says we're building. And what's the point of the building? We're taking our consciousness, we're creating a structural reality for ourselves where we can condition ourselves in ways that are useful and relevant and helpful to our own evolutionary growth. The challenge here is where we can either on the one hand become so self-repressed, afraid of acting, afraid of making a mistake, like a child that was chastised for doing the wrong thing, and now it's like that impulse to act is being suppressed. Or they never develop the necessary self-reflection and maturity. And so there's a need to actually develop self-awareness. When I act and do whatever I want to do, it has karmic effects. It affects other people. There are long-term consequences to the way that I act. So that for those who have Saturn in the first house or Aries, the evolutionary journey constellates here around becoming self-aware of how I can train and discipline my impulses, my actions, so that I can become a conscious leader, that Saturn grows stronger. I can become an authority and reference my own inner knowing of what is right. What am I acting for? What am I fighting for? Right? Are my actions, is my activism, is my purpose, is my strength, is it being used to build something constructive and useful for all of us on this evolutionary journey? What's my North Star? Okay, we'll keep it there.
That is a perfect
Music!
little
Wait,
finish.
music.
Where is
We
my
need Linda's
North
music.
Star?
We're the...
Oh, the music. All right. So, Stacie,
Yes.
go ahead. And you missed Saturn in the first house. I know you have it, right?
I do. I have it retrograde in the first house. Yeah, that was great. I'm just trying to absorb it all. You know, everything that Ari just said about, you know, how you grow this this Saturnian dynamic in your psyche in an Aries type of context. You know, this is also going to correlate to some kind of special destiny in terms of the role that you are meant to play in a context of society. So responsibilities, maturity, what are you doing for the world? What is the role that you're playing? And in this case, it's just it's a very instinctual process. It takes, just as Ari was saying, the kind of reflection to get this self-correction, to grow and build and to really keep your eye on the purpose, because that's another, Saturnian Capricornian correlation is, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, it just like zoomed out of my head. What was I saying, Kristin? I know you have it.
Something popped in my head, so maybe it was what came out of yours, but listening to the elders and those who have walked before us, because that first house impulse is to do it right now, and there needs to be that learning that there's a way to be humbled and to learn by those that have done this already.
Oh, that's excellent. Yes, I can see Saturn enough to even being a late bloomer in the work Aries, like, it takes this time to get to it's like just maturing into what it is that perhaps you were destined to do here. Or maybe it depends on the stage of evolution, right? There could be a fear of actualizing yourself in the things that you want to do because of your conditioning, because of your upbringing. Of course, I know your story, Stacie, so I'm going to, speak to it. And all right. I don't know if you can hear me. My internet got a little wild. So it's so interesting. There's been so many storms in different places. I know it was raining at Kaypacha's. It was raining at Bradley's. It's been storming on top of this yurt here.
I've got
so
wind
Aries
right now, crazy wind right now.
But before we close with a very special guest today, I wanted to ask if there are any questions of those people that are live with us today. We will just field a couple. If there's anybody that's dying to ask something, let us know.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What about the Saturn in Aries in the last degree of the fifth house? I mean, is it considered the fifth or the sixth, according to evolutionary astrology?
Well, it would be.
Do you want to answer that, Aries? Or?
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
If you've got Saturn on the 29th degree of the fifth house, this is clearly going to correlate to a process of culmination of some creative purpose that has been focused on and worked on, and just the actualization of that. So it would be more fifth house. And however, at the same time, because it's on that last degree, you are going to feel some of the energies in Virgo, and this growing awareness that there's more than just me. There's more than just this thing that I've created. There's certain things that can be improved upon it, and it could be used to help in different ways. So there is a little bit of that Virgo pull to make it less about the self, but it's definitely a culmination of the creative purpose that's been in motion.
Great, thank you so much. Very beautiful.
Any other questions?
What is the UP generation that Jen is referring to?
Uranus, Pluto.
Oh, okay.
One thought I had too along the lines of question with Saturn at the very tail end of the fifth house in Aries, straddling the sixth house, is that you're, as you said, Stacie, less about me and more about bringing my creative gifts out to the world, or being of service, even making it a karma yoga kind of experience, but taking it out into the world in a way that makes this world better because you've created it, right? Brought it to somebody or manifested it in some way that allows somebody else to benefit, or the world to be better because of it. And it makes it your mission in a way, when you bring it into the sixth house, wanting to leave this world better than the way that you found it. I mean, that can happen with a beautiful piece of art on a canvas, feeling like you've brought that creative process here and gifted this world with something that you've created. Any other questions?
Yes, Jen asks, any comment on the Virgo generation in the first or Aries? So Virgo in the first or Aries.
A desire to
Very
help,
good.
a desire to improve things, a desire to see what we're doing wrong and to implement adjustments. That's how I see it. A desire to heal.
I'll just offer one thought that when you put Virgo in the first house, we're interfacing the need for freedom and movement with Virgo, which is self-analysis and refinement and correction. So there can be, especially if it's Uranus and Pluto, there can be trauma that specifically relate to going somewhere, doing something, having a purpose, having a direction, and then making mistakes, or some sort of crisis happening and unfolding, or being violently attacked, which creates this deep fear or even neurosis around actually engaging, actually making choices. So that's one expression where there can be this evolutionary curve and empowerment in sort of healing and sort of reconnecting with the ability, with the sort of soul level capacity to move one's life according to one's own evolutionary needs. And on the other hand, this same signature, Virgo in the first house, can be a soul that is learning the Virgo lesson. And there might be a lot of instinctive actions, thoughtless movement that's creating a lot of crisis and problems and issues where they will be learning the lesson of humility and self-reflection, self-awareness.
Humility.
It also makes me think too of look at what's happening with these first responders, that there was an immediate crisis and they went and then no, we need our PPE. So having to respond to these immediate crises, but then with the Virgo energy too, refinement, improvement, in a sense of how we need to take action, but we also need to take action in a way that is protective of both the people we're helping and ourselves. So there's this Virgo Aries quality to it too around it's almost like jumping in and then, oh my gosh, I'm completely unprotected.
Right.
Jumping back out and saying, you know, let's I really like what I learned a lot listening to everybody here, of course, and the self-correction, seeing the Virgo in the first house, how jumping in and then in whatever forms having self-correction happen after the fact or after the jumping in.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any other questions?
No, I'm just going to use your self-cleaning oven example from now. That was great.
Mm-hmm. You know, there was one thing that I did intend to bring up at the end of Rose's talk, but I had my unmute. I was confused and I was muted while I was trying to talk. But I really appreciate how you broke up or brought up the word of narcissism, because it's not necessarily always a narcissistic thing in the sense of the stigma applied to the word, but it's a necessary self-focus, a self-centered attention in order to, in the case of Aries, being focused on those impulses that are emerging. And then in the context of Leo and the sun, it's that self-focus and that necessary narcissism to really concentrate upon what is special that one is containing within oneself and the creative ways that one can get that out. And so I just wanted to put that in as well.
Self is just as important, and we can't forget about self, right? Yeah. So we need time to explore self. We need time to talk to self. We need time to experience self, right? To feel, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if this, I just watched the movie Fearless with my partner. It's an old movie with Jeff Bridges. And I'm not sure if this word was used, but fear and fearlessness, right? So there can be actually this process in overcoming the need to act, the need to be decisive, with the Aries first house archetype. And a soul can really develop this, deep internal quality of fearlessness. I'm going to act and do what I need to do and trust the unfolding, trust what happens from that. And we'll look at that. We have a musical finale, and I'm going to sing you a song. So this song, maybe you could unshare your screen, Linda, and we can just, however. So in recognition of freedom being essential to the Aries archetype, there's also the teaching that we are thus each free on this journey bestowed by Creator to act and do what is necessary for our own evolutionary growth. And Jeffrey Wolfe Green actually once said something to the likes of, any desire that is relevant to our own evolutionary needs is bound to manifest. And there's a lot of forgiveness and healing in that notion, to recognize that a part of this world, a part of how we are created, is we have the freedom. This is actually all constructed for us to act and know ourselves, know our freedom, to live the life that is most true and authentic for who we are. So I never thought of this song as an Aries song, but it fits perfectly. Please sing along with me on mute. Freedom is my holy name. Freedom is my holy name. Freedom is my holy name. My holy name. My holy name. Freedom is my holy name. Freedom is my holy name. Freedom is my holy name. My holy name. My holy name. Oh, oh, oh. My holy name. Freedom is my holy name. My holy name. Eternal game. Said freedom is my holy name. Freedom is my holy name. Freedom is my holy name. My holy name. My holy name. Yo. Yo. Yo.
Thank you, Ari. That was just so beautiful. Your music is just so from the soul and just so full of peace. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
And Ari he just compiled a whole new body of work, a new album. This is my favorite song on his album. I thought it would be very appropriate today. So if you want to hear more from Ari, he's a wonderful musician, a writer, he's an intuitive guide, in addition to an evolutionary astrologer, he is all of those things. And you know that so much of your message and your work, you desire to express through music, and that desire to help people feel closer to God. And so thank you for that, Ari. I love that. Freedom is my holy name. It really embodies that Pisces, Aries combination there, right? That full circle feeling. So, and I'm just really thrilled about today. And thank you so much to those of you that are still here, Rose and Ari and Stacie, of course, and Deva. And I'm not seeing any other speakers' pictures here, so if I missed you, thank you to Bradley and Kaypacha. This is a wonderful initiation.
Yes, it is.
Of a new journey that we are embarking upon together.
Yes, and thank you for everyone tuning in and listening and participating. This was great.
Yes, and thanks to all of you that are here today. Hopefully we'll see you next time. And in 2 weeks' time, we do have we're looking at Taurus in the second house and Venus, and June the 20th, and we will be letting you know about that in the coming few weeks. Until next time, oh, there we are. Until next time, you all, namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste, everybody. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.